They say grief changes you. Mine transformed me into someone I no longer recognize, a hollow shell navigating the world on autopilot. 6 months ago, my fiancée Emma died in a car accident on the bridge crossing the Susquehanna River, just outside Harrisburg. She'd been on her way to meet me at the train station. I was returning from a business trip to Philadelphia, and she wanted to surprise me. Instead, I was greeted by a police officer with solemn eyes. I still remember standing on Platform 7 at Harrisburg Transportation Center, watching passengers reunite with loved ones while I received the news that would shatter my world. Time froze in that moment. Sometimes I think it never started again. That's why I found myself back at the same station on a rainy Tuesday night in October. I wasn't planning to go anywhere. I just ended up there, drawn like a moth to the last place I'd felt whole. The Grand Beaux-Arts building stood as it had for over a century, indifferent to my pain. I wandered through the nearly empty waiting area, watching raindrops race down the arched windows while checking the departure board out of habit. That's when I noticed it. A train I'd never seen before. Listed for Platform 3, the Keystone Limited, 11:43 p.m., Harrisburg to Philadelphia. The odd thing was, the destination board displayed it in a flickering amber light, unlike the crisp white LED text for other departures. I checked my watch. 11:35 p.m. I hadn't intended to go anywhere, but something about that amber text pulled at me. Philadelphia was where I'd been coming from when Emma died. Perhaps visiting would provide some closure. The ticketing windows were closed for the night, but a lone automated kiosk stood in the corner, its screen glowing softly. I approached and selected the Keystone Limited. One way to Philadelphia, $19.25. I inserted my credit card, expecting the transaction to fail. After all, this train wasn't on any schedule I knew. But the machine hummed, and a ticket slid out. It wasn't the standard glossy rectangle I was expecting. Instead, it was thick cardstock with an old-fashioned ornate border. The text was printed in an antique typeface, Pennsylvania Railroad, the Keystone Limited, Harrisburg to Philadelphia, October 17, 1923, Platform 3, Car 7, 2023 to 1923. Exactly 100 years difference. I almost laughed, assuming it was some kind of commemorative theme train. But then I turned the ticket over. On the reverse, in small, meticulously printed text, was a list of rules. Rule number 1. Board only Car 7. Do not attempt to change cars once aboard. Rule number 2. Do not interact with passengers wearing red carnations. Rule number 3. If the conductor asks for your destination, only say, Philadelphia. Rule number 4. Do not look out the windows after midnight. Rule number 5. If you hear whistling from the bathroom, do not investigate. Rule number 6. Be in your seat when the train crosses the Rockville Bridge. Rule number 7. Exit only at your listed destination. I stared at these bizarre instructions, convinced it was an elaborate Halloween promotion. Still, a chill crept up my spine as I read them again. The station clock struck 11:40. 3 minutes until departure. Something about this felt important, like the universe was offering me a chance at something. Without fully understanding why, I headed toward Platform 3, the ticket clutched tightly in my hand. Platform 3 was shrouded in a peculiar mist that seemed to cling only to that specific area. The fluorescent lights of the station dimmed as I approached, their electric buzz fading into silence. In their place, I noticed ornate iron lampposts along the platform edge, casting pools of warm, flickering light that hadn't been there moments ago. I checked my phone, 11:42 p.m., 1 minute until departure. The screen flickered and died, despite showing a full battery. I slipped it back into my pocket, just as a distant whistle pierced the night. The train that glided into the station wasn't the sleek Amtrak I expected. Instead, a massive steam locomotive emerged from the mist, its brass fittings gleaming despite the darkness. Behind it trailed a line of wooden passenger cars with large windows, their interiors lit by what appeared to be gas lamps. Ornate gold lettering on each car spelled out Pennsylvania Railroad, and each bore a number painted on its side. My heart raced as I counted the cars until I found number 7. The ticket felt unusually warm in my hand as I approached the steps. A conductor in a pristine uniform stood beside the entrance, his face partially shadowed by his cap. He looked young, yet somehow ageless. "Ticket, sir?" he asked, extending a white-gloved hand. I passed him my ticket, noticing a strange, ashen quality to his skin. He examined it before nodding curtly. "Car 7, window seat, Philadelphia." His voice carried no echo, as if the sound was being absorbed by the mist. "We'll be departing momentarily." As I climbed aboard, the warm glow of the interior enveloped me. The car was furnished with plush velvet seats and polished mahogany paneling. Crystal lamps hung from the ceiling, casting a gentle amber light over the passengers. Most seats were occupied, but no one looked up as I entered. I found my assigned window seat and settled in, trying to process my surroundings. Across the aisle sat an elderly woman in an outfit that belonged in a museum. A high-collared dress with intricate lace detailing and a hat adorned with what looked like real feathers. Next to her, a man in a 3-piece suit read a newspaper. I caught the date at the top, October 17th, 1923. My breath hitched. This wasn't some commemorative train. Everything looked genuinely antique, from the brass fixtures to the advertisements framed on the walls. The woman across from me smiled. "First time on the Keystone Limited?" she asked. I nodded, unable to find words. "You'll enjoy the journey, though it can be eventful." As she spoke, I noticed a man further down the aisle, tall, gaunt, with unnaturally pale skin. What caught my attention was the bright red carnation pinned to his lapel. Our eyes met briefly, and his lips curled into something approximating a smile. Rule number 2 flashed in my mind. Do not interact with passengers wearing red carnations. The train lurched forward as the whistle sounded again. Through the window, Harrisburg Station began to fade into the mist. There was no turning back now. The Keystone Limited gathered speed, its wheels clacking rhythmically against the tracks. Outside, modern Harrisburg had vanished completely. Instead, I glimpsed sparse electric lights of a much smaller city, interspersed with the warm glow of gas lamps. My watch still read 11:52 p.m., but the landscape suggested we were indeed somewhere, or somewhen, else. I tried to look casual while studying my fellow passengers. Most were dressed in impeccable 1920s attire, men in suits with pocket watches, women in dresses with dropped waistlines, some wearing elaborate hats. They chatted quietly or read newspapers, seemingly ordinary except for their dated appearance. The man with the red carnation remained in my peripheral vision. He hadn't moved but appeared to be watching me through the reflection in his window. I deliberately avoided looking in his direction. Beautiful night for travel, isn't it? I turned to find a young woman had taken the seat beside me. She wore a navy blue traveling suit and a small cloche hat. Her smile seemed genuine, without the unsettling quality of the carnation man. "Yes, it is," I replied cautiously, recalling the rules. She wore no carnation, so conversation seemed safe. "I'm Catherine Dawson," she offered, "heading to Philadelphia to visit my sister." "James," I replied, choosing to use only my first name. "Also to Philadelphia." "Business or pleasure?" she asked, removing her gloves one finger at a time. Before I could answer, the conductor appeared at our row. "Tickets again, please." I handed him my ticket, which he examined more thoroughly than before. "Your destination, sir?" he asked, his eyes never blinking. My throat tightened as I recalled Rule 3. "Philadelphia," I answered simply. He nodded and returned my ticket. When he asked Catherine the same question, she launched into a detailed explanation about visiting her sister who had just had her first child. The conductor's expression darkened subtly. "Just the destination, ma'am. Nothing more." Catherine fell silent, color draining from her face. The conductor moved on, but the atmosphere had changed. Catherine stared straight ahead, her earlier warmth evaporated. I checked my watch. 11:58 p.m. Rule 4 warned against looking out the windows after midnight. I felt my palms grow sweaty. "Excuse me," Catherine whispered suddenly. "I think I made a mistake." She gathered her small handbag and moved to a seat several rows ahead, leaving me alone. The train swayed as we rounded a bend. Through the window, I could see we were approaching a bridge spanning a wide, dark river, the Susquehanna, the same river where Emma had died. My chest tightened at the coincidence. The man with the red carnation stood up and walked toward the bathroom at the end of the car. As he passed, he dropped something onto my seat, a folded piece of paper. Without thinking, I picked it up and opened it. Inside was a message written in flowing script. "She's gone because you were late. Would you like another chance?" My blood turned to ice. How could he know about Emma? The clock struck midnight, and I remembered Rule 4 just as the train plunged onto the Rockville Bridge. The moment midnight struck, the gas lamps throughout the car dimmed to a murky amber glow. The note trembled in my hand as the train thundered onto the Rockville Bridge, once the longest stone arch bridge in the world, spanning nearly a mile across the Susquehanna River, the same bridge that ran parallel to the modern highway bridge where Emma had died. "She's gone because you were late. Would you like another chance?" I crumpled the paper in my fist. How could anyone know that I'd asked Emma to meet me, that if I'd arrived on an earlier train, she wouldn't have been on that bridge during the ice storm? My guilt was private, a burden I carried alone. The train lurched violently, and I remembered Rule 6. Be in your seat when the train crosses the Rockville Bridge. I was in my seat, but something told me I needed to stay there. Several passengers who had been standing or walking between cars scrambled to find seats. As we rattled across the bridge, I fought every instinct screaming at me not to look out the window. Rule 4 was explicit. Do not look out the windows after midnight. But the pull was magnetic, like the morbid curiosity that makes you peer over a cliff edge. My eyes remained fixed on my lap, but my peripheral vision caught movement outside the glass. Not the expected darkness of night over water, but shifting shadows that seemed to press against the windows. I thought I heard tapping, light at first, then more insistent, like fingernails on glass. Across the aisle, an older man in a tweed suit failed to resist temptation. He glanced outside, just for a moment. I watched his face transform, first confusion, then recognition, followed by pure horror. His mouth opened in a silent scream. No sound emerged, but his eyes bulged as he pressed himself against the seat. Then, in one fluid motion, he stood and walked stiffly toward the door connecting to the next car. "Sir," I called out, remembering Rule 1 about not changing cars. "You shouldn't." He didn't stop or acknowledge me. The elderly woman beside me grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Don't," she hissed. "Once they see what's out there, they belong to the bridge now." The man slid the door open and stepped through. No one else reacted, as if this was routine. The door closed behind him with a quiet click. "What's out there?" I whispered. "The in-between," she replied cryptically. "This train doesn't just travel through space, young man. The Rockville Bridge spans more than just the Susquehanna." She released my arm and returned to her knitting as if nothing had happened. A piercing whistle cut through the rhythmic clacking of the train. Not the locomotive's whistle. Something higher pitched and unnatural, coming from the direction of the bathroom at the end of our car. The sound raised goosebumps along my arms. Rule 5 flashed in my mind. If you hear whistling from the bathroom, do not investigate. The whistling continued, rising and falling in an almost melodic pattern. It didn't sound mechanical. It was too organic, too deliberate. I glanced around to see if anyone else was disturbed by it. Most passengers had their eyes downcast or closed entirely, their faces tensed as if enduring something unpleasant. Catherine, several rows ahead, turned to look back at me. Her expression was pleading, afraid. She mouthed something I couldn't understand, then turned away quickly when the conductor appeared in the aisle. He moved with mechanical precision, checking tickets again. When he reached my row, he leaned close enough that I could smell something odd on his breath. Not alcohol or coffee, but something metallic. "We'll be clearing the bridge soon," he announced, his voice cold. "There was a terrible accident on this crossing, you know. October 17th, 1923. A passenger tried to switch cars during the crossing. The door between carriages failed, and he fell to the river below. Some say he still tries to climb back aboard." The whistling from the bathroom grew louder. "Is that normal?" I asked, nodding toward the sound. The conductor's face remained impassive. "What whistling, sir?" Before I could respond, the train gave a tremendous shudder. The bridge crossing was complete. The lamps brightened again, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly. The whistling stopped abruptly. Through the window, I could now see moonlight reflecting off the Susquehanna behind us. We had survived the crossing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. The train was no longer taking me to Philadelphia, 1923. It was taking me somewhere else entirely. The train picked up speed after crossing the bridge, racing through the Pennsylvania countryside. With midnight behind us, I chanced to look outside. The landscape was unmistakably 1920s. Small towns, with minimal electric lighting, vast stretches of undeveloped land, and roads mostly empty of motor vehicles. The elderly woman beside me had fallen asleep, her knitting needles still clutched in her gnarled hands. Looking around the car, I noticed fewer passengers than before. Had some disembarked at a station I'd missed? Or had they, like the man who looked out the window, gone somewhere else entirely? The crumpled note from the red carnation man still sat in my palm. "Would you like another chance?" The question haunted me. Was this journey somehow connected to Emma? Could changing the past be possible on this impossible train? The locomotive whistle sounded, and we began to slow. Outside, a small station platform emerged from the darkness. The sign read, "Lewistown Junction," a real stop on the Harrisburg to Philadelphia line, though we'd reached it in impossibly quick time. As we pulled in, I noticed something odd about the waiting passengers. Their clothes were wrong for the 1920s, too old-fashioned, with women in bustles and men in frock coats typical of the 1880s. None of them moved as the train stopped. They simply stared at our car with vacant expressions. "Don't worry," came a voice beside me. The elderly woman had awakened. "They can't board unless invited. This train makes many stops along the way, but not all are in the same continuity." "What is this train?" I finally asked directly. "A connector," she replied, her eyes never leaving the window. "Between what was, what is, and what might have been." The platform outside began to change, the 1880s figures fading like mist. In their place stood people in 1950s attire, then 1970s, then modern day, cycling through decades like a slideshow. "We're passing through time," the woman explained. "Stations exist at fixed points, but they shift depending on who's looking." Before I could ask more, Catherine appeared at my side, visibly trembling. "May I?" She gestured to the empty seat beside me. I nodded, and she sat down, clutching her handbag tightly to her chest. Up close, I noticed something I'd missed before. A small scar along her jawline, partially covered with makeup. "He's looking for me," she whispered, glancing nervously toward the front of the car. I followed her gaze to see the conductor deep in conversation with the red carnation man. They both occasionally looked in our direction. Who? The conductor? No, the other one, Edward. She fidgeted with her wedding ring. "My husband." The revelation struck me. The red carnation man was her husband, but she was clearly terrified of him. "I was trying to leave him," she continued, her voice barely audible. "This train was my escape to my sister in Philadelphia. But he found out. He boarded too." The train jolted forward again, leaving the shifting platform behind. As we accelerated, I heard it again. The high-pitched whistling from the bathroom, more urgent this time. Catherine grabbed my arm. "Whatever you do, don't open that door. Not for anyone." "Tell me about your husband," I whispered to Catherine, keeping an eye on the red carnation man still conversing with the conductor. "Why are you afraid of him?" Catherine's fingers nervously traced the scar along her jawline. "Edward has moods. When we married in 1921, he was charming, successful, the heir to Dawson Steel in Pittsburgh. But something changed after his father died." She glanced toward the front of the car. "He became obsessed with controlling everything, especially me." "This scar?" "He threw a crystal paperweight when I received a letter from my sister without his permission." I felt a chill at the casual way she described such violence. "That's why you're running away." "I planned for months, sold jewelry when he wasn't looking, had my sister wire money to a private account. Tonight was my chance. He was supposed to be in New York until tomorrow." Her voice cracked. "But somehow he knew. And now he's here, on this impossible train." The train swayed as we rounded a bend. Through the window, I glimpsed the Susquehanna River again. We should have been miles from it by now on the route to Philadelphia. Spatial geography seemed as flexible as time on this journey. "What about you?" Catherine asked. "You recognized the rules, followed them. You know this isn't an ordinary train." Before I could answer, the conductor appeared beside our seats. Up close, his skin had an almost translucent quality, like wax paper held against the light. "Mr. Harmon," he addressed me by my last name, though I'd never given it. "A word in private?" Catherine squeezed my hand in warning, but I felt compelled to follow as the conductor led me to the space between cars, a small vestibule with doors on either side. The sound of the train's wheels was louder here, a rhythmic clickety-clack that seemed to form words just below the threshold of understanding. "You're carrying a heavy burden," the conductor said, his voice somehow audible above the noise. "Guilt, grief, the weight of a moment that changed everything." My throat tightened. "How do you know about Emma?" "This train exists at the intersection of possibilities. Those who board are often standing at crossroads, moments where lives pivot." He adjusted his white gloves meticulously. "Emma Matthews died at 9:47 p.m. on April 12th because you took the 8:15 train from Philadelphia instead of the 7:30. If you'd arrived earlier, she wouldn't have been on that bridge during the ice storm." Hearing it stated so plainly made my knees weak. "Is that what this is about? Some kind of cosmic punishment?" "Not punishment. Opportunity." The conductor's eyes reflected the dim light unnaturally. "The Keystone Limited makes certain accommodations for special passengers. You could see Emma again." My heart nearly stopped. "How?" "We'll be making an unscheduled stop shortly. If you disembark there, you'll find yourself in Harrisburg on the morning of April 12th. You could take the earlier train home, warn Emma, save her life. The possibility was intoxicating. What's the catch? There's always balance required. A life spared means another must be claimed. The woman sitting beside you, Catherine, is fleeing an abusive husband who will eventually kill her in November 1923. History records it as a tragic accident, but it was murder. His expression remained impassive. If you save Emma, Catherine must return to Edward. She will die in his care within weeks. The cruelty of the choice left me speechless. Trade one innocent woman's life for another's? Why offer this to me? Why not just let history play out as it did? The conductor straightened his uniform jacket. The rules of this train were created for those seeking passage between realities. Some use it to flee their fate, like Catherine. Others, like Edward, to enforce it. And some, like you, bored without understanding, pulled by grief's gravity. A pause. We simply maintain the balance. From our car, the whistling started again, a haunting, desperate sound. "What's in the bathroom?" I finally asked. A passenger who broke rule number 7. The conductor's voice turned cold. He tried to exit at a station not listed on his ticket. Now he seeks others to take his place. I thought about the note from Edward. Would you like another chance? And the man with the red carnation? Is he working with you? Edward Dawson is neither employee nor ally. He's a passenger with his own ticket and agenda. The red carnation simply marks those who have altered their fate before. He's ridden this train many times, always ensuring Catherine returns to him. The conductor checked his pocket watch. Our unscheduled stop approaches. You have 3 minutes to decide. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. But consider this. Every passenger on this train was given rules. Follow them, and you reach your destination safely. Break them. He glanced toward the bathroom, where the whistling had intensified. He returned to the main car, leaving me alone with an impossible choice. Through the window of the vestibule door, I could see Catherine watching anxiously. Beyond her, Edward Dawson stared directly at me, absently fingering the red carnation on his lapel. The train began to slow. Outside, mist gathered around a platform that materialized from darkness, a perfect replica of Harrisburg Station on the morning of April 12th. I could even see myself rushing to catch the 7:30 train to Philadelphia, the business trip that had started everything. If I stepped off here, I could warn my past self. Emma would live, but Catherine would die. The train whistle sounded mournfully as we came to a stop. The conductor reappeared, opening the external door. Cold morning air rushed in. Your choice, Mr. Harmon. This station isn't on your ticket. Rule 7 exists for a reason. Through the open door, I could see my past self checking his watch, oblivious to how this moment would define everything that followed. I stood frozen at the threshold, between train and platform, watching my past self hurry toward the 7:30 train to Philadelphia. One step, and I could change everything. I could save Emma. The balance must be maintained, the conductor reminded me softly. A life for a life. Catherine's face flashed in my mind, her terror when speaking of Edward, the scar along her jawline. A woman I'd just met, yet her fear was palpable, real. How do I know this isn't some trick? I demanded. That stepping off won't trap me like the whistling man in the bathroom. The rules exist to protect passengers, Mr. Harmon, not deceive them. The consequences are clearly stated. He gestured toward the platform. You have 30 seconds before we depart. Movement caught my eye. On the train, Edward was making his way down the aisle toward Catherine. His expression was pleasant, but his movements had a predatory quality, like a wolf casually approaching cornered prey. In that moment, I made my decision. I stepped back from the door. "No," I said firmly. "I won't trade one life for another." Something like disappointment flickered across the conductor's face. "Very noble," he remarked, closing the door. Or perhaps simply cowardice disguised as morality. The train lurched forward, leaving behind the platform where my past self had vanished from view. I returned to my seat beside Catherine, who clutched my arm the moment I sat down. "What did he offer you?" she whispered. "A way to save someone I lost, in exchange for—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "In exchange for me," she completed, her voice surprisingly steady. "Edward has made that arrangement before. He finds desperate people on this train and offers them deals through the conductor, their loved ones back, if they help return me to him." Before I could respond, Edward appeared at our row. Up close, I noticed his eyes had a glassy quality, reflecting light in ways human eyes shouldn't. "Catherine, darling," he said, his voice unnaturally smooth. "You've led me on quite a chase." He turned to me. "And you, declining such a generous offer. Most passengers jump at the chance." "Leave her alone," I said, the words braver than I felt. Edward's smile never reached his eyes. "This isn't your concern anymore. You had your chance at intervention." He stretched out his hand toward Catherine. "Come, dear wife. Your seat is beside me, where it belongs." Catherine trembled but didn't move. Several passengers watched with detached interest, like audience members at a familiar play. "I said leave her alone," I repeated more forcefully, standing to block his access to Catherine. Edward's pleasant mask slipped for an instant, revealing something ancient and terrible beneath. "You don't understand the rules of this train, do you? Some passengers are meant to reach Philadelphia. Others are meant to disembark early." I noticed he wore a strange ring on his right hand, a dark metal band with symbols that seemed to shift when I tried to focus on them. He twisted it absently, and the whistling from the bathroom suddenly stopped. The silence was more terrifying than the sound had been. The bathroom door at the end of the car slowly opened. No one emerged, but I sensed movement in the darkness within. Something watching, waiting. "There are 8 rules on your ticket, not 7, Edward said quietly. I pulled out my ticket, turning it over. There, at the bottom, previously invisible but now stark against the cardstock, was an 8th rule. 8. If rules 1 through 7 are broken, you become a collector. "What's a collector?" I asked, my mouth dry. "Someone who gathers souls for the train," Catherine answered, her eyes fixed on the open bathroom door, like my husband became after he died in 1919. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Edward wasn't just abusive, he wasn't even alive. "The Spanish flu took me," Edward confirmed, following my thoughts. Catherine was relieved, finally free. She boarded this very train to start her new life in Philadelphia. His expression hardened. "But I found a way back. I've been collecting for the train ever since, in exchange for keeping her with me." The dark presence in the bathroom doorway began to take shape. A vaguely humanoid silhouette comprised of shifting shadows and mist. "You declined your chance to save your Emma," Edward continued, "but there's another way. Become a collector like me, gather souls for the train, and eventually, you'll earn the right to change the past." The shadowy figure drifted closer, moving down the aisle with unnatural fluidity. "Don't listen to him," Catherine pleaded. "Once you start collecting, you become like the train, trapped between worlds, feeding on grief and regret. There's no escape." The elderly woman across the aisle suddenly spoke up. "The next station is Lancaster. It's on your ticket." Her eyes met mine meaningfully. "Remember Rule 7. The shadow was now just feet away. Edward's smile widened as he twisted his ring again. "Your choice, Mr. Harmon. Join us willingly, or be collected yourself." The train whistle sounded, and through the windows, the lights of Lancaster Station appeared in the distance. The shadow creature hovered at the edge of our seats, its form rippling like smoke underwater. I could feel its cold emanating from several feet away. "Lancaster Station approaching," the conductor announced, moving through the car. 2-minute stop." Edward's confident smile faltered slightly. "Choose quickly, Mr. Harmon. The train doesn't linger at stations." I glanced at Catherine, then at the elderly woman across the aisle who had warned me about Rule 7. Her eyes flicked meaningfully toward the window, toward Lancaster Station. "I choose neither option," I said, grabbing Catherine's hand. "This is my listed station." Edward's expression contorted with rage. "Your ticket says Philadelphia." I flipped my ticket over, showing him. Where it had once clearly read Philadelphia, the destination had changed to Lancaster. The conductor appeared beside us. "Quite right, Mr. Harmon. Lancaster it is." Edward lunged forward, but the conductor stepped between us with surprising speed. "Rule violations are my jurisdiction, Mr. Dawson. You've overstepped." The train hissed to a stop alongside Lancaster Station, its platform illuminated by gas lamps that cast long shadows. The station appeared as it would have in 1923, a grand stone building with arched windows and ornate ironwork. "This way, quickly," the conductor instructed, guiding Catherine and me toward the exit. The shadow creature tried to follow, but seemed unable to pass the conductor. "She belongs to me," Edward shouted, his human appearance flickering to reveal something withered and corpse-like beneath. "I've collected for you for decades." "And your contract is fulfilled," the conductor replied calmly. "The balance shifts tonight." We rushed down the narrow aisle. As we passed the elderly woman, she pressed something into my hand, a tarnished silver pocket watch. "A timekeeper knows the true rules," she whispered. "Hold tight to it at midnight." The platform air hit us like a wall of ice as we stepped off the train. The conductor handed me both our tickets, now clearly marked Lancaster. "Rule 7, he reminded me. "Exit only at your listed destination." "But it changed," I said. "It was Philadelphia before." "The destination is always in flux until the journey reveals what you truly need." He glanced at Catherine. "Take care of each other. Few escape the Keystone Limited with their original purpose intact." "What about Edward?" Catherine asked. "His contract is terminated. 100 years of service in exchange for keeping you. Tonight marks the end." The conductor checked his watch. "You have different tracks to follow now." Before I could ask more questions, he stepped back onto the train. Edward appeared at a window, his face now a barely human mask stretched over something ancient and decayed. The shadow creature loomed behind him. "This isn't over," he snarled, his voice distorted. "The train circles back. I'll find you again." The whistle blew, and the Keystone Limited pulled away from the platform, gathering speed until it vanished into mist and darkness. Catherine and I stood alone at Lancaster Station, the pocket watch heavy in my palm. The station around us seemed to waver, details shifting subtly, electric lights replacing gas lamps, modern signs appearing, the stone darkening with decades of weathering. "We're returning to the present," Catherine whispered, staring at her hands. Her clothing remained unchanged, but there was a new awareness in her eyes. "What happens to me now?" "I don't exist in your time." I opened the pocket watch. Inside was not a clock face, but a small compass, its needle spinning wildly before settling on a direction that felt more conceptual than physical. "I think this shows the way forward," I said. "Not just physically, but temporally." As the station solidified around us into its modern form, I noticed a newspaper on a nearby bench. The date, March 31st, 2025, the present day. We had returned, but Catherine had somehow come with me. How is this possible? She wondered, touching the brick wall as if to verify its solidity. The conductor said the balance shifts tonight. I studied the compass needle, which now pointed steadily northeast, toward Philadelphia. I think you were meant to escape, not just from Edward, but from your time. A life for a life doesn't always mean someone must die. Catherine's eyes widened with understanding. Emma's death created an opening for me. Not just her death, I realized. My grief. My inability to move forward created a space between times where you could slip through. The watch ticked once, loudly, and the needle began to glow with a soft amber light, the same color as the train's windows. I think we're meant to follow this, I said, to Philadelphia, but the long way, through time rather than space. Catherine took my arm, her expression resolute. Then let's not waste this chance. Together we walked toward the station exit, leaving the ghostly echoes of the Keystone Limited behind us. 6 months have passed since that night on the Keystone Limited. Catherine and I now live in a small apartment in Philadelphia's Old City district, not far from the station where we first arrived in this time. The transition hasn't been easy for her, a woman out of time, learning to navigate smartphones, internet, and the complexities of modern life. We created a paper trail for her with help from a sympathetic attorney who specialized in helping refugees establish identities. As far as the world knows, Catherine Dawson is a distant cousin who lost her documentation in a house fire. The pocket watch sits on our mantelpiece, its compass needle permanently pointed toward the past, a reminder of where we came from, but not where we're going. Sometimes late at night, I catch Catherine staring at it, perhaps wondering about the life she left behind. I've kept the ticket, too, framed alongside an aged newspaper clipping I found in the historical archives at the Free Library of Philadelphia. The headline reads, "Prominent businessman Edward Dawson perishes in train accident." The article, dated October 18th, 1923, details how Edward Dawson fell between cars while aboard the Keystone Limited near Harrisburg. His body was never recovered from the Susquehanna River. The newspaper mentions his distraught widow Catherine, who was too overcome with grief to comment. History rewrote itself. In this timeline, Edward died as a passenger, not as a collector. The woman mentioned in the article wasn't Catherine at all, but someone or something maintaining the appearance of continuity. I still dream about Emma sometimes, but the crushing guilt has faded. I've come to understand that her death, while tragic, created the circumstances that saved Catherine. One life making room for another, the balance the conductor spoke of. We visit Harrisburg occasionally. Catherine wanted to see the Rockville Bridge in daylight, to face the crossing that had been so terrifying on the train. We stood at its edge one clear autumn afternoon, watching modern trains rumble across its sturdy stone arches. "Do you think it's still out there?" she asked. "The Keystone Limited?" "I'm sure of it," I replied, connecting what was, what is, and what might have been. We've established a routine now. Catherine has discovered a talent for historical research, her first-hand knowledge of the 1920s, making her an invaluable consultant for the university archive. I've returned to my job, finding meaning in work that once seemed hollow after Emma's death. Last week, while waiting for a commuter train at 30th Street Station, I glimpsed something that sent a chill through me. A lone kiosk in the corner, its screen glowing amber rather than the standard blue of SEPTA ticket machines. An elderly woman stood before it, her expression one of grief and longing as she inserted her credit card. I almost approached her, almost warned her about rules and red carnations and whistling from train bathrooms. But the compass in my pocket, a smaller version I now carry always, warmed suddenly against my leg. When I looked again, both woman and kiosk had vanished. The Keystone Limited continues its journey through time, collecting passengers standing at crossroads between grief and possibility. Some board knowingly, seeking to change their fate. Others, like I once did, find themselves drawn by currents they don't understand. Catherine squeezes my hand whenever we pass a train station, a silent acknowledgement of our shared journey. We don't know if Edward will ever find a way back, if the train might someday return for us, but we've learned to live with uncertainty, to follow the compass that points toward tomorrow rather than yesterday. After all, every journey has its rules. We've simply learned to write our own.